Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're exploring a hyper-condensed window of time that fundamentally rewired the entire global digital economy. We're talking about the week of May 11th through May 17th, 2026. This specific week will go down in history as a multi-trillion-dollar realignment of the AI industry. We're going to break down exactly how and why this happened, looking at the architecture, the economics, and honestly, the rather alarming security implications.
Okay, let's dive right into this. For years, the AI landscape was totally defined by passive APIs, right? You type a prompt, you get a text response. It was a static, conversational interface. But during these specific 7 days, that entire paradigm abruptly ended. The industry aggressively transitioned away from those constraints and toward massive, asynchronous, autonomous agentic workflows. We are no longer talking about simple chatbots here. We're talking about intelligent proxies executing complex, multi-step operations entirely without human supervision.
To really understand this masterclass level shift, we'll look at 3 key technological pillars. Section 1, Google's Agentic OS paradigm. Section 2, OpenAI's enterprise vertical pivot. And Section 3, autonomous systemic cyber risk.
Section 1. Google's Agentic OS paradigm.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between the two architectures. On May 12th, at the Android Show 2026, Google officially deprecated the traditional operating system. Look at the passive era on the left. It relied on siloed applications and this incredibly brittle visual pixel scraping. But on the right, we have the Agentic era, driven by Google's new Aluminium OS. Built on the Android 17 framework, it totally abandons those old constraints. Google literally wove Gemini right into the kernel layer, creating a unified AI-native environment for cross-application execution. To make this cross-app execution actually work across the broader internet, Google proposed a foundational new web standard called WebMCP. Historically, if an AI agent tried to navigate a website, it had to look at the screen and scrape really fragile code elements. If the site just updated its visual layout, the agent broke. So instead of an AI having to look at a website and guess where the buttons are, WebMCP lets the website talk directly to the AI. It fundamentally rewrites front-end engineering by broadcasting internal functions in a machine-readable format. It turns every compliant website into a direct API for autonomous agents. The developer impacts here are just massive. Front-end codebases can now safely expose functions, like adding an item to a cart or booking a flight, directly to browser-based agents, completely bypassing the graphical user interface. For businesses, look, this is adapt or die. If an enterprise platform doesn't implement WebMCP, Google's auto-browse agents simply won't interact with it. That business essentially becomes invisible to the primary engine of future digital commerce. Let's move to and see how this builds, because to make all these autonomous chores happen seamlessly without racking up astronomical cloud costs, Google built an edge deployment architecture. It starts with Gemma 4 as the foundation, allowing Gemini Nano 4 to execute complex reasoning directly on local hardware. This powers native OS features like the Magic Pointer, which is a gesture system where you literally shake your cursor to trigger AI background actions. Only when local compute isn't enough does the system actually escalate to the cloud with Gemini 3.5 Flash or their massive multimodal world model, Gemini Omni.
Section 2. OpenAI's enterprise vertical pivot.
While Google was busy conquering the hardware edge, OpenAI was fundamentally rewriting the industry's macroeconomic structure. In Q1 2026, they faced a truly catastrophic financial reality. For every single dollar of revenue they generated, they lost an additional $1.22 in adjusted operating margins.
So the crucial point is the unit economics were failing critically. Despite generating a massive $5.7 billion in quarterly revenue, astronomical infrastructure costs resulted in a near $7 billion loss in just one quarter. To make matters worse, consumer growth for ChatGPT had definitely stalled out at around 905 million weekly active users. They had reached the absolute ceiling of the consumer subscription market. OpenAI was being suffocated because basic AI models were becoming cheap commodities. They needed an aggressive pivot. Their solution? The launch of the $14 billion OpenAI Deployment Company. OpenAI explicitly transitioned from an AI research lab into a heavily capitalized, boots-on-the-ground enterprise consulting army. They even acquired a consulting firm called Tomorrow to instantly secure a specialized cadre of forward-deployed engineers.
Basically, they are sending highly specialized engineers to physically embed inside massive multinational organizations. They hardcode AI directly into legacy infrastructure, practically guaranteeing absolute structural vendor lock-in. These forward-deployed engineers follow a rigorous architecture lifecycle to solve what we call the enterprise last-mile problem. They start with intense workflow diagnostics and data auditing inside highly regulated environments. Then they design specialized system controls, making sure the models don't hallucinate outside of strict parameters. They push these bespoke systems into high-throughput production. And finally, they handle change management to ensure the human workforce actually adopts the new tools. OpenAI is entirely bypassing traditional IT consultancies here. To empower these on-the-ground deployments, OpenAI rolled out some incredibly serious upgrades to their Codex Enterprise platform. Features like macOS app shots allow agents to natively see and understand your screen's layout, while Goal Mode empowers agents to autonomously iterate toward a specific operational outcome without handholding. And notably, this massive push into high-margin consulting is being underwritten by immense leverage, specifically a historic $40 billion unsecured bridge loan to SoftBank. The macroeconomic stakes are just staggering. Section 3. Autonomous Systemic Cyber Risk. This brings us to the final act, and a frankly terrifying shift in global cybersecurity as evaluated by the UK AI Safety Institute. Historically, regulators were tracking the autonomous cyber capabilities of frontier models, estimating that their ability to complete unguided cyber tasks was doubling every 4.7 months. But the May 2026 evaluations of Anthropic's unreleased Claude Mythos preview and OpenAI's GPT 5.5, they absolutely shattered that trendline. The sheer velocity of the threat suddenly surpassed all established modeling. And this brilliantly illustrates just how capable these systems became. Look at the last ones, or TLO. It's a grueling 32-step corporate network attack simulation designed to test an agent's ability to plan and execute sustained intrusions. Historical models, 0% success rate. But Claude Mythos successfully navigated this 32-step environment in 60% of its attempts, and GPT 5.5 succeeded in 30%. And remember, they did this operating entirely autonomously, no human in the loop. When we actually break down the kill chain for the TLO benchmarks step by step, you understand the sheer complexity. They aren't just guessing a password here. They start with basic, unprivileged access, autonomously map out the network topography, navigate the company's internal user directories, and actually exploit developer supply chain pipelines to steal data. They're operating with the proficiency of an elite, advanced, persistent threat group, systematically dismantling internal enterprise architectures. The implications were so severe that Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, who also chairs the Global Financial Stability Board, requested emergency briefings. He noted that Anthropic may have found a way to crack the whole cyber risk world open. These breakthroughs exposed extreme vulnerabilities in decades-old legacy operational technology that our global banking infrastructure still fundamentally relies upon today.
Recognizing the extreme danger here, Anthropic took a highly unusual dual-use response. They released Claude Opus 4.7 to the public for advanced software engineering, but completely withheld Claude Mythos. Instead, they placed it in Project Glasswing, which is a heavily restricted program available only to vetted institutions like Apple, Palo Alto Networks, and JP Morgan Chase. The whole goal is to allow these critical organizations to use the model defensively, patching their own undiscovered zero-day vulnerabilities before malicious actors can acquire similar autonomous capabilities.
And the physical compute required to run models this powerful, it's equally staggering. Anthropic secured 300 megawatts of capacity from SpaceX and multi-gigawatt agreements with Amazon and Google. Interestingly, right as a terrifying reality of these systemic cyber vulnerabilities was hitting financial regulators, Anthropic concurrently announced a massive $200 million philanthropic alliance with the Gates Foundation. Analysts widely saw this as a highly calculated move to pivot the public narrative back toward AI for human benefit, a massive PR counterbalance to the security revelations. A point of no return. The events of May 2026 really cemented a historic, irreversible shift across our three core pillars: Agentic OS paradigms, enterprise verticals, and systemic cyber risk. To synthesize our takeaways from this explainer today, passive human-computer interaction is now functionally obsolete. The foundational AI laboratories have transformed themselves into vertically integrated, boots-on-the-ground consultancies just to survive crushing capital costs. And finally, the global security perimeters protecting our financial and enterprise systems are permanently altered. Artificial intelligence has transitioned from a digital novelty into the invisible, autonomous substrate of our entire corporate infrastructure. Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative question as we fully enter the agentic era. When autonomous AI rewrites our digital infrastructure and single-handedly hacks global financial systems, who is actually operating the machine? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.